Yeah, I think I would say I'm not sure I learned these next couple of things from working with LAP, but I think I knew that the process was simultaneously individual and macro and totally disorganized, right? Even across my court, for example, there are 15 free agents who hire on their own time frames. It's all and so what students are having to start off doing is figuring out where they want to go just in the broadest sense, and then having to make a lot of individual decisions about how to attack that, which in turn requires them to gather information that's not systematically or regularly available. I think one thing I definitely have learned from being around LAP is how different things are at different schools. I deal with a relatively small number of schools, and I think some schools are much more organized and systematic, and others are not. But even within those schools that seem like they're organized and systematic, there's real asymmetry in access to that information. I know from I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland, and I know from time I spend with students, and now having 10 years of my own clerks and interns coming through, there are a lot of students who don't know what any of this stuff is until deep into their second year. And alongside things like the clerkships database and the work that LAP is doing, we as judges and the schools need to do a better job of making students understand what these internship and clerkship opportunities are. And I speak at both of our local schools every single year in the fall and try to get into the 1Ls, like, look at, here's what this is. It may or may not be for you, but if you do decide that clerking is for you, which by the way I think it should be, there are things you need to be doing during your 1L year, even just to be thinking about where you might want to go with this, and thinking about relationships with professors who might be able to write letters for you or make phone calls for you or help guide you. And if you're sitting in class in the spring of your second year and you've never thought about this stuff, you're going to be behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And it's not impossible to recover from it, but it's hard, and those disadvantages correlate often too with first generation college and law students, with students of color or people who come from other disadvantaged backgrounds. And so the broader information asymmetry is a real issue. I have one my clerks from about 5 or 6 years ago who's now a tenure track professor. She literally had not heard of clerking until the fall of her second year. One of her professors pulls her aside and said, "You should do this." And she ends up applying to interview with me, or to intern with me, in the spring of her second year. And I ended up hiring her out of that internship to be my clerk. And she was wonderful. And then went to a law firm and is now at her second law school in a tenure track assistant professorship. But that never would have happened if someone hadn't on their own picked her out to do it. And that's a great story when it happens, but it shouldn't fall to that. It should be the kind of thing that students can pursue on their own, and with the kind of information that makes it available and possible for anyone who's inclined.